You here once again. I'm Ethan Janney. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. We're also going to let in our live audience here on the Zoom call. Welcome if you're joining us on Zoom. Good to see you over here. It's going to be a great show today. Fun to have the summer developing alongside of all of this. Went to the theme parks with my son this week. That was fun. Get to enjoy the weather. I'm in the Chicago area. Um, okay. Let me introduce the program if it's your first time, so you understand what you're getting yourself into, and we'll get rolling here. So, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano and music world. This could include a manufacturer of an instrument, a rebuilder, musicians, makers of other instruments, of course, besides piano, and of course, piano techs, our core audience. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's an online learning resource that brings you cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour, just 16 bucks a month to get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. Join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. We have a podcast audio only version of the show, which can be found at pianotechradio.com. We've reached top 100, top 10, even number one status in various locales in the performing arts category on iTunes. And you can listen in your car, lifting weights, doing dishes, however you like to consume your audio content, working in the workshop, of course. We also have a blog on Substack. Check that out. Search for Piano Technicians Masterclasses. We'll expose you to some of our exclusive content we have in the Masterclasses member area, stuff you just can't find anywhere else about rebuilding pianos, about designing pianos, regulation, voicing, and also some tangential topics. We just did a master class, for example, on from a famous composer and conductor, and he was talking about musical beginnings, how pieces are started. So we've got a wide variety of things you can check out in the masterclass member area. Substack will give you a peek. We've got our socials linked in Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can sign up for the email list on our website, and that is pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. Just add your name and email, and you'll be ready to go. All right, without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest for the day. Her name is Kate Olson, and she's a saxophonist, a composer, a band leader, whose work brings together adventurous improvisation, expressive clarity, and a deep sense of musical curiosity. Whether leading her own projects or collaborating across Seattle's vibrant creative scene, Kate's playing carries both individuality and connection that feels especially compelling to explore. As a performer, educator, and collaborator, she's built a musical life centered around creativity, experimentation, and it's constantly evolving the process of making music. You might see her performing with projects including co-solo and co-quartet, while also collaborating with ensembles led by Wayne Horvitz and many other artists across jazz, experimental, and interdisciplinary scenes. Kate, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here.
Wonderful. And I always like to give it a launch off with a dive down memory lane and hear what your childhood was like when it came to encountering music and becoming passionate about that, and ultimately that leading to a career.
Yeah, I was primarily an academic musician for the first, almost 20 years of my life, I think. I started playing in a public school band program in sixth grade. I chose saxophone because I thought that all of the kids that played saxophone were really cool and I wanted to be really cool like them. And I think, like a lot of young female musicians, I was encouraged to play flute instead, and I told them absolutely not, which is kind of funny because now I love to play the flute, and I have recently picked up alto flute as well as regular concert flute. Um, I moved around a lot when I was growing up. My dad was in the Air Force, so I did that sixth grade band program, and then we settled again in Laramie, Wyoming. So Laramie, Wyoming has about 30,000 people in it on a good day, so it's not exactly a mecca for music education, although there are now some really great programs there. And so I grew up in a place where there were no role models for what it looked like to be a professional musician. And so I kind of had to make it up for myself. At the time that I was going into college at the University of Wyoming, I was a part of a student led jazz combo, and it was the only jazz combo and the only kind of like actively performing gigging ensemble that was sort of sponsored by the university at the time, which was a pretty special place to be in because we got a lot of experience performing for like doing actual gigs in the community, which a lot of musicians in Laramie were not getting the opportunity to do that. I then ended up going to the University of Michigan for grad school. I got a master's of music in improvisation. They have a really unique program there called Creativity and Consciousness Studies. So it really gets into the nitty gritty of how our brains work when we're improvising and when we're being creative. And so that takes me through my mid 20s, and I'm still, in school and not really a full fledged professional musician yet. After grad school, I worked on a cruise ship for a short period of time, which is, if you've ever talked to anybody about working on a cruise ship as a musician, you know that it's got its ups and its downs. I did not enjoy it very much, but I did become a really great sight reader through that process, so I appreciate that. And then I eventually settled in Seattle, and I've been living in Seattle for about 16 years now. And so I've really built my career in this city and in the Pacific Northwest. And yeah, doing a little bit of everything to keep the cash flowing.
Cool. Yeah, interesting evolution. I'm from Michigan originally, not near U of Michigan. My father lived in Ypsilanti for a while,
Mm.
in that area. But I grew up on the western side. And what years were you there at the university?
I was there from 2006 to 2008, and then I left to do the cruise ship gig. And I came back for a little while. I lived there for about another year in 2009.
Okay.
And just, yeah, played a lot in the Ann Arbor and kind of surrounding area. There's a lot of community theater there, so I started picking up other instruments, flute and clarinet and bass clarinet. Really started doubling and playing in a lot of pit orchestras in the area, as well as doing more improvised gigs. There's a really strong, like, kind of experimental music and improvised music scene in tiny little Ann Arbor in the middle of Michigan. So,
Yeah, is it what is it? Jeff Daniels is around that area?
um,
As an he's like a theater, he's like a actor, a professional actor. I
right,
think he
right.
does a lot of stuff in that scene as well.
Yeah, we used to see. John Lithgow lives there,
Oh, really?
or is there
As a
frequently, and
Okay.
so we would always have during college we would have like John Lithgow sightings at bars and stuff.
Nice.
So
Nice. I'm discovering this group, which has been around for a while, but I'm just discovering them through Spotify, and I love their music, and it's fun to hear that they're out of the University of Michigan. Are you familiar with Wolfpack?
yeah, those guys were in school in undergrad when I was there in grad school, so I got to play a
Okay.
lot with those guys. Yeah,
Oh,
and
you did? Okay. Nice.
yeah, a lot of the folks that are sort of like tangential to that group as well. Performers like Theo Katzman
Yeah.
were around and we're pals and we're going through that creativity and consciousness undergrad program. Or
Okay.
it's like it was like a music program that was then like strongly associated with this kind of subset of psychology as well.
Okay, great. Great. Yeah, I love Theo Katzman stuff as well. And yeah, what I love about we'll talk about your music, of course. I love about their, all their music is there's just such interesting musically. It sounds poppy, but then you dive in and you're like, oh wow, this is like some weird, interesting thing going on. Um, and personally, I didn't share with this with you before the program. I studied neuroscience, so like
Oh, cool.
this is fun for me. We can dive deep on that topic as well. Why don't we take a listen to some of your music to get that context going?
Sure.
We've got this recording of you at the KNKX out there in your area, and we have a handful of tracks. Which one do you think? I want to, I don't know if this is appropriate because we're billing you for as the sax player, but I want to hear the flute track.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Yeah. It's
Is
called Car
that the
Trouble.
second
It's the
one?
second track. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me pull up the video and we'll get that shared. Okay, so screen share, video, share sound, and we should be good to go.
One, two, three.
Just gonna pause it real quick here and make sure the volume's up. Yeah, we're good. Okay, I've somehow drawn the screen. Get rid of that. Okay. Sorry to ruin your introduction.
It's all
All
right.
right. Here we go. Play. Lovely.
Thanks. So that one's a new, that's a relatively new track. I think that was maybe the second time that we performed that one. Like we wanted to do it in the studio. We had performed it once before, and I think I had owned the alto flute for like 2 or 3 months at that point, so it was pretty new to me. But yeah, just really experimenting with that combination of like muted trombone and alto flute. We've decided that we really like that flavor.
Yeah,
So I'm going to be using more of that on the next record.
very nice. We had a trombonist on our last session. That was kind of fun. I have a plastic trombone that I got from my
Oh,
son.
yeah.
So I made him give me like a brief lesson on trombone. So that's a really interesting instrument, actually. Kind of, just the way that it's set up. I did like the sound that the visuals there for those who are just maybe just listening on the podcast too. Very, very nice visuals. I felt like I got this vibe like it was like an indie like Private Eye film or something. And then like we're gonna walk out after that tune and like one of you's gonna be walking down the street and then you're gonna be followed or something, and it's gonna lead to some other part of the story.
Yeah, it's really interesting so KNKX is our local kind of like listener supported public radio jazz station. And they have a studio in downtown Seattle, and that's where that was all recorded. And when you walk in, it looks like you're gonna record in an elevator. I mean, they have like really beautiful like cameras and mics and everything is set up, and the guy that does sound and does the mixing and stuff is just like top notch. Everything is really beautiful. But when you're in there, it's like fluorescent lights and like so whoever is doing their video editing is an absolute pro because
Hmm.
it feels like you're in an elevator. You're like, this is gonna
Ah.
be kind of gross and like weird. Like it's not gonna look great, you know. It's like, but they invite a live audience and you maybe heard there was some applause
Right,
after
right.
solos
Yeah.
and stuff, and so there you know 10 or 12 people sitting in the studio there with us, which was really it's nice to be able to do that kind of like high quality recording, but also for a live audience because I think you get a lot of energy from performing live. So.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah, very cool. That's great that you got that set up. Um, let's see. Let's just dive a little bit deeper on the flute thing. I'm kind of latching onto that. So you had just gotten that alto flute, but you had been playing other flutes before that.
Yeah.
Um, what sparked the interest? Where was it kind of like a rebellious streak against your former self, and you're like, I'm gonna try the flute out. Be new
um
stage.
yeah, I think I mean a lot of my musical decisions are come from me being asked to do something that I'm not sure if I can do and saying yes to it anyway, and then like teaching myself how to play those instruments or how to do those things. So I have done a number of performances. I mean, if you play jazz saxophone and you're playing in a big band, then the chances of you getting asked to play some flute or clarinet are pretty high. They're both very common doubles, and I like to say that it's kind of unfair for saxophonists in particular, and maybe the thing that makes it more fair is that the saxophone itself is like a very has a very like shallow learning curve. I think you can start playing saxophone like immediately, and you can make a sound and you can make a lot of notes happen fast on the instrument without a lot of experience. But so the thing that's unfair is that you can't really make a living on saxophone just playing saxophone if you're, unless you're like, I guess if you're, touring with David Bowie or something like that, then you could probably just play saxophone. Like
Hmm.
if you're David Sanborn and you're
Hmm.
recording with David Bowie, then no one's going to make you play flute on anything.
Sure.
But for somebody like me, I need to be at least functional on flute and clarinet. And so playing in pit orchestras, doing big band gigs where I was asked to play doubles. I think of my primary instrument as soprano saxophone, and then picking up the flute. And then I started taking lessons. So the flute on the other hand, has a pretty steep learning curve. Just making a sound on the instrument is difficult for a lot of people right off the bat. And so I was like okay at flute, but it was always very stressful for me to play it. And so I started taking lessons with Leanna Keith, who is currently doing her doctorate at UC San Diego. And it's a very competitive program. I cannot say enough positive things about Leanna. She's an incredible musician. Wouldn't consider herself a jazz musician, I don't think, but she is an improviser. And she does a lot of extended technique, and she does a lot of performing, doing live looping, which is a part of what I do as well. And she does that often with low flutes, so alto flute and bass flute as well. And so I just kind of fell in love with the sounds that she was making, and I started taking lessons with her. And she really transformed flute for me from something that I was anxious about, or was like, yeah, I can play it, but like not at the level that I play saxophone, or like, oh, maybe you should really hire like an orchestral flutist or something like that. And through studying with her, I got to the point where I was much more comfortable with it, comfortable enough that so I play with Wayne Horvitz, as you mentioned earlier. Wayne kind of reworked one of the bands that he has been playing with in Seattle for the past 12 years, into a slightly smaller ensemble that's more chamber music oriented. And I was like, he always hires me to play soprano because that is my primary instrument. I was like, Wayne, I've been playing flute. I've been playing a lot of flute. I just bought an alto flute. And so he wrote a few pieces where I get to play flute and alto flute. So that's become like a part of what I do as a regular, like, it's not a special thing that happens every once in a while now. It's like something that I do once a week, is performing on those instruments. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm really happy with just the timbre of the alto flute is just so gorgeous. It's like,
Hmm.
you know, it's, yeah, it's like honey. I mean, it's just so sweet and mellow. And so I'm always kind of looking for interesting timbres, interesting sounds, especially as a composer. So I think that that's really what led me to the flute. And then I don't have a lot of love for like strict like classical orchestral flute playing. That's not the direction that I'm trying to go in. But I really do love the flute as an expressive vehicle. So hopefully it'll show up more and more in my own music.
Wonderful. Well, let's check out another track from the recording here. What's standing out to you as the next
Um,
one option?
we could try let's do Bumbling Thumbs Blues. So this it's the third track on that recording. It was written as kind of a meditation on how difficult it was for musicians to go through the pandemic, where we basically didn't play with another live musician, most of us, right? Some people were lucky to have situations where they were able to safely get together and play with other people. But as a wind instrument player, it was really difficult for me. And so it's a kind of about that feeling of coming out of the pandemic and feeling like I've lost all this technique, and I've lost like my ability to really get around my instrument. So it's kind of intentionally awkward, and we do some intentionally awkward things with it, as far as how we structure the improvisation. So that might be a fun one to check out.
All right, let's check that out. All right, heading back to here, we'll do the share full screen and go. It's like that little it's yeah, but it's interesting to have that type of a solo, right? Where you have the drummer basically turning it around every time.
Yeah, so we decided that instead of trading fours, so it is a standard 12 bar blues form with
Hmm.
like just a couple tiny little alterations to it harmonically. And we decided instead of trading fours and doing these even 4 bar phrases, we wanted to trade sixes. And it also kind of turns the blues on its head as like a jam session standard, right? Where everybody takes like 47 choruses. And
Hmm.
so this is like more like our punk rock blues, right? Where it's like 2.5 minutes long and everybody just takes these super short solos and everyone's just like kind of communicating back and forth. So and then harmonically with the melody, there's some stuff where it's like, okay, we're gonna like lean into this like fourth, right? We're gonna lean into this dissonance over the four chord or whatever.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, it's I hope it kind of captures the awkwardness of like, how does this instrument work? Like, what am I doing? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
I used to be so good at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Wind instruments, specifically, yeah, I haven't thought about it much, but I'm thinking it probably came up. I heard it before, but yeah, that it's weird, because you're trying not to spread germs through your, breathing, and then there you
Right.
are with an instrument that's like spitting it out at the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so glad that's over, man. How traumatic that whole thing was.
Yeah.
I feel like, oh gosh, our whole world has changed in these terrible ways. I just feel like people it's just hard to tell because there's other things that go on at the same time. I'm getting older, so maybe my perspective has changed. Maybe it's just a new generation, whatever. But like, I just feel like people do not really want to like be near each other. They're
Oh
just like,
yeah.
ooh,
I think
unfamiliar. Yes, don't, you know.
I think there's still I mean if you want to talk about like just the performing arts industry in general, like for musicians, especially jazz musicians, but I think honestly for musicians of all types, what we do is so social. And it really is about gathering and being in the same space and like building community around things that we have in common. And it doesn't feel like we've recovered. Like the hang is really different now than it
Hmm.
used to be. I mean, I'm also at a point in my life where it's like I'm playing with musicians that are 20 years older than me, that are 20 years younger than me, and everything in between. And so there are, just culturally, like people are like quitting drinking. Like younger generations don't drink as much. Older generations are like, nah, I'm too old for this nonsense. And so I think that when music happens in clubs and bars and alcohol is always around, it
Mm,
becomes this thing where it's like, okay, well, if people aren't really engaging in that sort of community anymore,
mm,
then it affects the hang. And so it's like people aren't going out as much, people aren't staying out as late. And it's really changing how I know that, like, for me, things that changed post pandemic is largely around like how I'm spending time with people. It's a
mm,
lot more of like going to a person's house or like non standard performance venues, like doing house concerts or, yeah, or like inviting people into a recording studio, like these like much smaller kind of like tighter gatherings versus just going and playing clubs. But then, a couple like last week, I was playing up in Bellingham at a club called the Wild Buffalo with a hip hop artist, Sam LaChow, local Seattle rapper, and people were just like packed in, and we didn't go on until 10:45 at night. And so it's like that's still happening out there, but not as much in like my community, right? It's
mm,
happening still in the hip hop community. It's happening, and I mean Sam is just a little bit younger than I am, so it's like it's still, like generationally it's still happening for folks of our generation, but it definitely doesn't feel like it is back the same way that it was pre-pandemic.
hmm. Yeah, this comes up a lot on the program as well. This started during the pandemic, one of
Hmm.
those sort of pandemic projects, right? People, piano tuners couldn't tune, so we said, "Oh, let's get over here and give them moral
Yeah,
support."
yeah,
But yeah, that's been a recurring theme too, at least for myself, is like just wanting, craving for more people to go out and do things and see live music. It's just like it's so enriching, and it's one of those things. And not only have the post-pandemic ethos, but you have this ethos of, why we can stay in and watch Netflix when we want to go out. Like there's sort of like a built-in laziness,
yeah,
ease, and it's one of those things that you don't realize what a good decision it was until after you do it. And convincing somebody up front that it's a good idea. No,
right.
like leave the house. I just don't feel like leaving the house.
Yeah, you have
No,
to
leave
overcome
the
that
house.
objection. For sure.
Let's talk a little bit more about the creativity and consciousness program over there. What do you feel like, you got out of it, or any sort of takeaways that still sit with you strongly?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just that it's a really unique approach to learning improvisation in general. So Ed Sareth was my mentor when I was there. He is kind of, I think he's doing kind of like a staged retirement now, but he at the time was the head of the program, and he just in his life has a long history of like meditation and spirituality, and that for him like informs everything that he does with education and improvisation. And so some of the stuff that we were doing was just really unique, unique approaches to like feeling time together as a group. And then so things like in one of my first graduate classes, we would pick a mode and pick an odd time signature, so like 7/8, right? So okay, we're in Mixolydian mode and we're gonna play in 7/8, and so then we would work on everybody feeling that 7/8 together in different subdivisions. So like all the different subdivisions, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. So and then like 1 2
Mhm.
3 1 2 1 2, right? So like all of the different iterations, and then everybody had like 4 bars that they would have to improvise completely unaccompanied, and we would just like pass it around the room. So everyone was trying to feel time together. This idea of creating flow states and like deep focus through the practice of meditation, and then also to access deeper sources of creativity. So that's the kind of like spiritual aspect of it. It's like, well, where does your creativity come from? Where do these ideas come from? Especially if you're approaching improvisation in a sort of like in a non-genre specific sense, right? Because if we're talking about jazz improvisation or classical improvisation, then there's a vocabulary there that you are expected to work with and that you have to learn and study to be able to put together musical phrases and musical words turn into musical sentences that actually make sense to people. Non-genre specific improvisation is a lot freer, right? This idea that like really anything can happen. So if you're playing drums, you don't have to play drums in the regular way that you would play drums. You could get up from this is like a Han Bennett thing. You get up from the drum set and you go over and you start drumming on the wall, right? Like because that is open to you. That's a possibility. And so to be sort of like psychologically and spiritually open to all of those things, and using meditation not as just sort of in the way that it has become hip in the West to be like, oh, we all need to like relax and we need to center ourselves and we need to like be able to deal with our lives and stuff, but actually looking at meditation practice as a way to deepen focus, get more ready access to flow states, and really explore our own like kind of creativity and where that comes from. And so that's I mean that's it's like creativity as a practice and meditation as a practice to ameliorate your creativity. So that's kind of where that program is coming from, or at least that's kind of what I got out of it. this idea that we're all kind of fed these like 30-second videos on every social media platform, and it's, potentially ruining our ability to actually deeply focus and really enjoy the process of learning something or expressing ourselves. And I think it's even more prescient with AI, right? This idea that like you hear, uh, oh, I don't remember what the guy's name is, but basically the kind of viral clip that's going around where the guy's like, musician, like people don't really like making music. It's like not really very fun. So that you can just feed prompts into AI and it'll make music for you, which is completely the opposite of how anyone who actually makes music feels about making music. It's like, no, we do it because it's fun. We sure as hell aren't doing it because we're
Right.
making a ton of money.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. The people I know, like I actually have a pretty good a good friend who doesn't play instruments or whatever, and he's been having fun exploring Suno, I think it's called.
Yes,
Um and I think the way that people who are doing it like he is enjoy accessing that is they're like, oh, I don't know how to play an instrument, and now I feel like I can still make music, and they're inventing lyrics or like maybe exploring like different types of genres or something like that. But you make a good point, and there's actually something therapeutic about playing an instrument. There's something, sort of embodied, that you can't you can't ever really replace by putting a prompt in. Right? You're making the music, and making the music in itself is the thing that's happening. Um, yeah. So that's an interesting point. Um, in terms of the consciousness stuff. So did you sorry, I've got to pick something up here. Did you get into the Kenny Warner stuff at all? Like that was when I was studying jazz. This was back in the, you know, early 2000s. And I encountered the Kenny Warner stuff and I got into that. And I was, wasn't I was like, oh no, effortless mastery. What is that? You got to put some effort in if you want to master something. And but it changed me. It changed me quite a bit. It opened up this sort of flow type of thing. So, if number one, have you explored that? Is what you were exploring there similar or different? Um, Curious about that.
Yeah, I don't think you could study jazz in like the late 90s, early 2000s without running into effortless mastery. I think, I think, so I recently went back and was rereading that because I'm working on a book about improvisation. Like I'm working on a book about improvisation pedagogy and kind of like different modes of accessing improvisation that aren't necessarily music theory based. Okay. So it's
Hmm.
not like, okay, you got to learn all your scales and all your everything, and then you will magically be able to improvise. Or the opposite of that, which is you need to just feel your way through everything and like, like just be in the music and this kind of like magical approach. And so finding kind of like a middle path through that is what I'm interested in, especially as an educator. And I will say that like going back and rereading effortless mastery, there's definitely some like verbiage in there that like doesn't age well. There's a lot of like
Oh,
random
yeah.
stuff. Like there are like these goofy little asides about like menopause. And I'm
Okay.
like, this makes no sense.
Oh, I don't
Um,
remember that.
but it's not something that the first time I read it, I like it all, it was
Went through
fine.
your,
But
yeah.
like, it's like, I don't know, rereading it recently, I'm like, oh, it's a jazz bro manual written by a jazz bro.
Okay,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Interesting.
but I think so. So I think something that's really interesting is that really high level improvisers. So this is where the neuroscience I think kind of like fits into it. So like high level improvisers either from the like rappers, like freestyle rappers, jazz musicians, um, they have done like fMRI scans to see like what is happening when these people are actually engaging in active improvisation, and they see the parts of their brains that are the like the gatekeepers, like the judgy parts of our brains, like basically don't turn on or
The
don't fire
default, the
nearly as
default mode
much.
network, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember
Okay.
exactly what it is, but it's definitely the thing that is like is uh like creating value judgments on like what you're doing in the moment.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that that is, I mean, that's the idea, right? Behind the effortless mastery like principles is like you kind of have to get out of your own way, and you have to be egoless about it. Because if you're always thinking about whether or not you are doing a good job and whether or not anyone is liking what you are doing, then you're leaving a lot of like creative real estate on the table. And it's way more fun to play with musicians who, you know, it's like people talk about the most fun people to play with are the people that make everybody around them sound really good. So like later tonight I get to play with Christian McBride, and he came to a rehearsal yesterday, and I was just like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, like I mean, like I've seen him play a bunch of times, but I've never had the opportunity to play with him before. And I'm like, there are a bajillion like really good bass players. Like, what is it that makes him special? And are we going to feel really different in this ensemble? And I don't know exactly what it is that he's doing. I mean, you could say that it's like his quarter note feel or like his intonation or his creativity or whatever, but it felt like every musical decision that he made was about making the entire ensemble sound better, right?
Hmm.
So I think that that's kind of like, for me, that's my big takeaway from stuff like effortless mastery is like it really is about getting out of your own way. Um, with the creativity and consciousness program, or the elements of it, because I was firmly in the music department, and this is like tangential to the music department, right? It's like things that are
Hmm.
connected, where you could do like a psychology or a neuroscience focus, or you could do a music focus.
Hmm.
So the parts of that program that I got to experience were less about kind of like de-stressing or whatever, and more about the actual like access to creativity.
Hmm.
So it wasn't about making people feel better about performing, like getting rid of performance anxiety or getting rid of
Hmm.
like physical limitation, you know, like physical tension and limitations that kept you from realizing your full potential as a musician. And it was more about sort of like clearing internal space so that you could be open to all of the various different sources of creativity. And whether that was a spiritual thing for each individual person or not was like, it doesn't matter, right? It's like if it
Hmm.
is, that's great. And if it's not, that's great too.
Hmm.
But I think it was more about this idea that when we talk about flow, like what is flow? Like what are we actually tapping into? And so being able to have that sort of like deep attention that allows you to listen and play at the same time, for example, that
Hmm.
allows you to be supportive of the people around you while taking an improvised solo. And so that's kind of how it all connects for me, is the like how do I get myself to a place where I can just drop in
Hmm.
immediately as soon as I'm improvising or as soon as I'm on stage with people, and create the best musical experience for everyone around me, as well as like reaching my own potential as a performer. So
Hmm.
I think that that's kind of that's kind of where it's at for me. And I think that I think Effortless Mastery is a great, like, that book and that and his exercises and stuff are like a great tool for getting there. I think the creativity and consciousness program at the University of Michigan is like a little different. It's like tangential
Mm,
to that.
hmm, cool. Um, yeah, I I've explored that as well, like the meditation and try different types and transcendental meditation or just breathing exercises or um and yeah, I'm curious more about what you've talked about. I think it's what I find interesting as I've done more trying to be in a flow state or things like that is that um personally, I sometimes feel like I feel like I'm in a flow state, but maybe I'm not, you
Hmm.
know? And it goes back to kind of what you're saying. Actually, we did a master class yesterday, I believe. Anyway, so great conductor and composer, and he was talking about I think he was talking about performing together with folks or something like this. And he was talking about how if you're going to play a piece, there's kind of two ways you could play it. One way you could play it was like to, for your own feeling of it, right? Like, and there is something to that, right? Just play what you would enjoy,
Right.
But then also there's a different way of playing a piece with the intention of how somebody else is going to experience it.
Hmm.
And he gave this example. It felt a little awkward when he said it, but I feel like it's appropriate. I'll say it as well. The difference between masturbation and making love, you know?
That's fair.
And I think that's also kind of what you're getting at, is
Yeah.
like you're getting yourself in the right zone so that it, and it's not just about your own, hey, I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm peaceful. It's about I'm somehow getting in a zone now, but where I'm also like connected with the others around me and very intentional about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's I like to think of it as a hierarchy of like three or four different like constituents when you're playing music. So like um there's serving the music, there's serving the people that you're playing with, there's serving the audience, and there's serving yourself. And so, ideally, for me, like the best situations that I have been in, they are in that order. You serve the music first. What is best for the music? Sometimes the best thing for the music is for you to lay out. Don't even make a sound, right? Maybe be there energetically or whatever, but you don't have to contribute. The next one is what do I do to make everybody on stage with me feel good? Which also is in service of the music and is also in service of the audience and is also in service of myself, right? But it's like, okay, what do I do to make it so that everybody else around me sounds really good, feels comfortable, like it can knows what to expect from me, those kinds of things. You get so much energy from the audience that I think it's really important to yeah, I mean the masturbation versus making love thing, right? Like it's like there are plenty of musicians who can get up and just be like, "Look what I can do! Look what I can do! Look what I can do!" And sometimes it connects with the audience, and sometimes it doesn't, right? And so I think even in the most experimental and most like kind of obtuse forms of music making, I think you need to consider your audience, right? Because if you take care of them, they'll take care of you. And then really the last one is like you shouldn't be in a musical situation that isn't satisfying to you as an individual or you as a creative person. But if you put that first, it's really hard to connect with the other three, I think, because that's where performance anxiety and um, yeah, just like disconnection, performance anxiety, self-centeredness, ego, like that all kind of like gets wrapped up together. And then it can be really hard to be a performer if that's where your focus is. It's not fun anymore, right? It's just constantly, was I good enough? No, I wasn't good enough because you can never be good enough. It's like, this is what we live with all the time, but it doesn't have to be the focus of what we do.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember learning jazz in high school, and I remember these moments where as us kids, basically, you'd see the Miles Davis, and he'd turn out away from the audience, and he'd be like, "Oh, and that's cool. You don't care about the audience or whatever." But then I saw some interview, I think, with Miles Davis recently, and some guy was like, "Hey, why don't you look at the audience?" It's so funny to see what big deal people make of things at certain times.
Yeah.
I gotta look at the audience, and he was just like, "Oh, like I just wanted to communicate with the drummer. Sometimes I just want to look at the bass player, like it's not, you're not like trying to alienate people, even in that case where it seemed like it was very intentional on his part, like he had some kind of attitude or chip on his shoulder. It was really just like, no, he wanted to connect with the other people on the stage. Like that's all that was.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Um, and of course that serves the music, that serves the
Right.
audience, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, I we if we want to, we could take listen to one more thing. Although typically I like to wrap up at the end of the hour. Are you Jones to listen to another track, or should we wrap it?
Not necessarily. The only thing I
Okay,
want to do is let people know about the record because we did listen to one of the tracks that's off that record. It was one of the
sure.
first singles. So in January, that quartet that we were listening to earlier put out a record called "So It Goes," and if anybody is excited about looking up that video, that track, the title track, is also on that video. This is the record. This is what it looks like.
Nice. I like it.
Goes. Um, and I'm really proud of it. It's on all the streaming services, and it's out on OA2, which is an imprint of Origin Records, which is a Seattle-based jazz label. And yeah, there's physical media, there's vinyl, and there's CDs even. But there's also
No
digital.
tapes, no cassette
No
tapes.
tapes, no cassette tapes. They, I had to do vinyl on my own. Origin doesn't do vinyl anymore. They're like, nah, it's
Hmm.
too much trouble. But I'm like, if you're playing live shows, people want vinyl. So yeah, very proud of it. Probably gonna put out another record within the year with that same ensemble, featuring some of the newer stuff, including that alto flute tune that we heard earlier, and yeah. So that's kind
Great.
of leave them wanting more. People can go find the recordings if they want to listen more.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I'll add it to my Spotify's and get it in the loop. Okay, well, we'll do our outro. We'll sign off. Usually with the guest, I'll close out the Zoom, but if you just want to jump right back on, we'll do a quick wrap up, just you and me.
Sounds good.
But we have officially reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks so much to Kate Olson for joining us, as well as our live participants. We appreciate having you here. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient by subscribing to Piano Tech Radio Hour. 16 bucks a month. You get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. Don't forget about the podcast, the Substack, socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and sign up for the email list with just your name and email at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. All right, we'll sign off. And Kate, I'll see you in another